For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Well, the Indian economy is still very sensitive to the price of oil, a little bit less to the price of other metals and commodities. But, it's true that as prices of all things begin to rise, as manufacturing costs begin to go up, India's going to feel the pinch. India already has a massive import bill, which triggers a lot of policy making from Delhi, trying to, local source a lot of things that the country imports. Oil, that's been so far very difficult to do, even with dramatic expansion in the amount of acreage under exploration in India. So I see mostly downside, but there are some, potential bright spots. For instance, you have seen Eastern Europe be one of the competing markets against India for things like IT services. And because of instability in Europe, you may see some of that work come back to India in a little bigger way. So could be some potential small bright spots, but I see more downside risk, at least in the near midterm.
Professor Menon, your assessment?
Well, I'm not an expert on India like Richard is, but there's one thing that bears watching, and that is when India takes delivery of the S-400, which is a very sophisticated Russian air defense system, will it trigger the CAATSA sanctions? I don't know whether it will or not, but people are certainly raising that issue here. One could argue that Modi's India is seen as a kind of a budding strategic partner. On the other hand, India abstained from the resolution. It is a very significant military purchaser of Russian equipment, and I don't know how this will play out. So far as I know, CAATSA hasn't been raised and put on the front burner because there are too many other things going on, but it's something to keep your eye on.
How do you see India's legacy dependency on Russian arms and military supplies, especially in light of what's happening vis-a-vis China? Sure. Where do you go? I mean, I've read Dhruv Jaishankar writing recently that it's, India's 1991 economic moment in the military terms, in terms of pivoting away.
So just before I answer that very quickly, in addition to the increase in prices of a lot of things, from metals to wheat to energy, there has also been a further disruption of the global supply chains, which were already made bad by the pandemic. Now, on the Indian-Russian arms relationship, two things. The Indian arms market is open to international competition in a way that it has not been in my memory. The Russians, the Soviets / the Russians had a lock on it. Now, because the Indian force structure is still composed of either imported Russian Soviet equipment or equipment made under license, this cannot happen very quickly. And I think one of the reasons why India has treaded lightly on the Russia-Ukraine war and not jumped in to condemn Russia is that there's a lot at stake for the Indian government. You do have Western armament companies, Israeli armament companies operating in the Indian market and eyeing it as a potential market. But there's a legacy problem with Russian equipment that cannot be overcome quickly.
I just wanted to go back to the CAATSA question, Mr. Rossow. There were indications coming out of the administration, at least, that the Biden administration understood the position that India was in. And with China being the bigger threat for countries around the world, there would probably be a waiver. But then there is Congress, and then there is the invasion. Do you see anything changing in Washington because of what's been happening?
Yeah, it's a cloudy situation at best. I think, before the invasion, I think we had a narrow pathway that seemed more likely than not that a waiver would be granted. But now, there is a disappointment in large sectors of the U.S. security establishment that would like to see India. They talk about, shared values and democracy, things like that, and they would like to see India take a harder position. I think those that are in the trenches, that are working day and night, to try to create a stronger defense posture vis-a-vis the dangerous elements of the rise of China. That's the group that's willing to give a little bit more leeway for India on this, and would look for a pathway through. There is, of course, a waiver authority that's included in the legislation. It's very narrow, and it's got language on things like, is the country supporting America's security interests globally? And those are the areas that I think have pinched a little bit more sharply closed because of this invasion and because of the perception that India hasn't really taken a stronger stance. India is in a campaign here, certainly the Indian government, to try to sell its own message more broadly in Washington. Whether that'll resonate is tough to see, because we are just probably a few months away from when India will have the S-400s deployed and testing, and that was the trigger point for Turkey. So it looks like we're just a few months away from decision time. So this invasion, in that sense, couldn't have happened at a worse time.